Chapter 2. Rats. My gods, it was cold. Putrid and foul. A beautiful day for swimming, and a beautiful day for killing. For as far back as his failing memory could reach, Eggs had only ever truly loved two things, and today there would be ample opportunity for both. Amongst the plates of floating ice and fish entrails, his beady eyes scanned the horizon. The human town was the same as the others he had seen, with low stone walls and snow-capped roofs. Boring little boats were scattered about the boring little bay, carrying singular humans doing boring fishing, except this town had a unique smell, a luscious, fishy smell. From dark to sunrise, he watched the sleeping town wake, getting steadily colder in the estuary's current. His knife chattered between his clenched teeth, shaking his tiny brain and his tiny skull. Why did he always get the cold jobs? Mru and Gru were probably stalking through the low brush, blanketed in the morning sun, eating rotten apples and getting drunk on life. Worse yet, they were probably wearing armour. Eggs didn't get armour. Eggs got a knife for good behaviour, and he knew not to complain about it. To the north, a large flock of birds bled into the sky, squawking and talking something furious, little black streaks across an orange void. Birds weren't boring. Birds could fly. Birds had pretty colours, and birds were the signal he was waiting for. With methodical strokes, he fanned ahead, pulling closer to the nearest boat. It wasn't more than 5 planks wide, shaped so thinly and so smoothly the whole vessel appeared as if it were a leaf. It had no sails or lines, just a simple wooden hull and a singular oar. He ran a claw along its curved edge and marvelled at the finish. Coated in some kind of sap or paint, had a glossy sheen that reflected his angular face. This boat wasn't boring. As stealthy as the mad rat, he eased himself onto the slender craft. It barely moved at all, no rock or sway. Eggs was light and quiet, and in his experience, killing was far easier when you were both. He rose into a low crouch, his knife in his hand, shrugging off the aches and pains of his cold muscles. Water dripped from his knotted hair and down his face as he eyed the back of his next victim. Kneeling at the bow, they wore some kind of black pelt and had red hair that flowed from head to deck. The colour reminded him of autumn leaves and how they crunched under his spindly feet. He missed the autumn and the early times, when rats were rats and food was plenty. Now Eggs was far bigger and his stomach was empty. He was sure they were holding a bow, its long limbs pointing out to either side. They scanned the water, left to right, and when their profile presented itself, he saw they were a girl, not much bigger than himself. With his free hand, he scratched the gap between his incisors, sliding up and down and feeling the smooth enamel. A decision needed to be made. Should he stab her or drown her? Which was kinder, and why did he care? Struggling to decide, he pondered what the mad raven would do. He would have probably pecked her eyes out, which was his usual unwavering advice. Not exactly useful in this situation, yet he considered it all the same. Over and over he twisted the knife in his hand. Drown or stab. Stab or drown. A scream broke out across the bay, met with a discordant mixture of crashes and shouts. Several fishermen had turned their bows to the land, straining and shouting but receiving no reply. The girl had broken her concentration and jerked shoreward, splashing a long rooster tail across the water's surface and into Eggs's face. "Ma? Pa? What's going on?" Her voice was high but not shrill, sweet but not sickly, the taste of summer daisies or Mru's pear stew. Not boring at all. A tall man appeared at the water's edge, all apron and beard, not 40 feet away. "Get to the far shore, Ly. Take your things and run." His voice wasn't as delicious. It was all desperation and no song, a foul taste in Eggs's mouth. "But how am I? Damn it, Lyla. They're here. Days early, but they're here." A black figure darted from the shadows with a sword held high. "I got one!" With no finesse, the man and rat clashed together, twisting and tumbling before splashing into the river. "Willa!" she gasped, frozen in place. Rats smashed through doors, brandished swords, and cut down villages. They moved with violent inertia, entirely unstoppable, falling, climbing, smashing and stabbing. They coloured the water's edge with chaos. Some tried to flee, and some tried to stand. Egg saw a woman backed into a corner, brandishing a copper pan. She successfully knocked back several crooked blows, but the rats encircled her, some shorter, some towering, their disparate patches of armour jostling as their abrasive chuckles cut through the noise. He turned back to the girl and noticed her wet eyes as she blinked them away, breathing deep with her head hung low. Bigger now, much bigger than Eggs. Damn it! Stab or drown! She placed her bow down and paused, her eyes steadily scanning upwards towards him and the knife in his paw. He attempted a yellow smile before breaking the silence. "Stabs or drowns?" She tore forward, jolting him into the air and bouncing the stern upward. He scrabbled to keep his footing, but failed and fell on his back, the hunting bow ploughing through his blurred vision. Instinctively, he parried with his knife. "Get!" she chopped. "Off!" Another. "My!" She raised the bow high above her head, crystalline spray glinting in the morning sun, her gaze boring into him. "Boat!" A black arrow flew across his vision and struck her through the thigh, adding red and iron to the spray. She didn't wince, but her fury was gone, and her strength with it. Eggs pushed against the deck, his mouth agape as she fell into the water. "No!" He rolled over and clawed for something to hold on to, but came up short. He wouldn't let her die. Not like this. Stab, not drown. He had decided. A little late for sure, but Eggs was always a little late. He waited a moment for the water to still, then another, but the girl was gone. Arrows whistled overhead in both directions, shouts and screams all around. He would have to swim. Slicker than an otter and smarter than a seal, he slipped into the water, his knife clenched between his teeth. His eyes darted about the murk as he tried to find his mark. There were fresh bodies on the riverbed, the green lawn broken by black shapes and shadows of the vessels above. Arrows peppered the surface, adding to the turbulence, all the while Eggs tried to focus. He followed the current, turned, then saw what he was looking for. Drifting seaward, with one hand on a damaged leg, she flowed like a sea anemone poked with wood, small bubbles leaving her open mouth. With a few precise kicks, he was with her. She was still and unmoving, dangerously so. He cut her from her heavy sodden pelt and let the two halves join the current as he paddled towards the far shore, a spindly arm around her chest. It was further than the village, much further, yet the sandy shore came up fast. He grabbed and scratched his way onto the land and dragged the girl behind him. He tilted her head back and punched a hard rhythm on her chest. Eggs loves to swim. Grew, can eat, dirt. Get off my boat. She spewed seawater into his face, convulsing and coughing as he stepped back to admire his work. She was unconscious yet still breathing, her leg healthy and the arrow intact. It would need to be removed, then cleaned, then bound, but why would he do such a thing? Stab, not drown, right? Stab, not drown. A tingle ran down his spine, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. He stepped aside as a huge wet figure sprang past him, their enormous arms grabbing at the empty air. They slid across the sand, stumbled, then turned. "Get away from her, you rodent!" was the man from before, the one she had called Willa, all wet beard and apron. "Now just a second!" Eggs attempted to spread his claws, but found one of them holding his knife. The man clenched his face in fury, cheeks apple red and eyebrows meeting moustache. "Kill my friends, will you?" He stepped forwards. "Burn my town, will you?" Raised his fists. "I'll die before scum like you lay a hand on my Lyla." Then he charged. The problem with big opponents, and Eggs had found this to be universally true, was that they were slow, boringly slow. He guessed it wasn't apparent to them, or they wouldn't try their luck so often, but the human species as a whole were glacially slow. Shadowed by the sun, the man loomed larger, all his features fading to black and out of view. With a single precise throw, Eggs concluded the fight, and with a low oof, the man collapsed face forward in the sand, a knife protruding through his back. Eggs stared on, waiting for some kind of relief or rush, but it never came. Across the river, the village was burning hard now. No more snow on thatched roofs, and in some places, no roofs at all. Several of the little boats were bobbing in the current, with bodies lying across them. Some were simply empty, studded with arrows. A black flag rose high amongst the wreckage, jostling back and forth. The rest of the rats were probably celebrating now, eating human food and downing human drink, taking human lives and breaking pretty things. He looked down at the girl and let out a long sigh. "What's am I to do?" The mad rat crawled up from behind her injured leg. "You could always, eat her." No, not after all this troubles." The mad raven landed in her pretty ginger hair, its dislodged eyes swinging around on nerve stems as it spoke. "You could always, peck them out?" "That won't help." The two little creatures looked at each other, their heads crooked. "Well, Chief," the mad rat darted in a blur before appearing on his right knee. "Seems you've chosen to do something entirely off script." Yes, you're as mad as we are." The raven pushed and pulled at her nostrils in time to a silent tune. "Mad!" And with that, The mad gods disappeared. Against the rising sun, he could see the silhouettes of several humans, strung up from their fishing equipment and swaying in the breeze. She wasn't safe here. He wasn't safe here. They could head south, away from the rats and away from the killing. He looked down at the body of the man. Well, most of the killing. Stupid eggs.